Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with New England clam chowder dip. That's right, if you can turn a sandwich into a dip, we should certainly be able to turn a soup into a dip. I mean, give or take some extra liquid, we're pretty much already there. But anyway, after joking about making this dip in the last video, I thought I would actually give it a try. And it really did turn out amazingly well. The only problem is I thought I was inventing this, which turned out not to be the case. But while this is not original, I think we've made a couple improvements. So let's go ahead and get started with the first example of that, and that would be the amount of bacon. So into this cold dry pan, I'm going to add 6 slices of bacon that I've cut up into like 1/2-inch pieces. And what we'll do is cook this over medium heat until almost all that fat renders out, and the bacon starts getting nice and crispy. And by using 6 strips of bacon here, we're doubling or tripling the amount of bacon that I saw in the other recipes for New England clam chowder dip. And while there is a danger that we use so much bacon we sort of overpower that clam flavor, that was a risk I was more than prepared to take. And I ended up being very happy with my decision. But anyway, like I said, we're going to cook that bacon over medium heat until it's pretty much fully cooked. And one visual clue I look for is when you start to see a little bit of foaminess on the bacon, it's usually close to being done. Okay, we all remember that childhood rhyme. When your bacon starts to foam, you're almost home. And what we'll do when it reaches this point is go ahead and add our celery and onions. But first, I do want to remove a couple tablespoons of bacon to use for the top. So that's what I'm doing here. And we'll just set that aside for later. And then once that's been accomplished, like I said, we can go ahead and add our celery and onions. And I'm using green onions, but regular onions will work. And I also tossed in a nice big pinch of salt. And what we'll do is just leave our heat on medium and cook those stirring for a couple minutes until they just start to soften up, which is probably only going to take about 2 minutes. And by the way, if you need to drain or blot some of your bacon grease out of the pan, feel free. That is just you cooking. But my bacon was relatively lean, so I didn't need to. And then what we'll do after those veggies have cooked for a couple minutes is simply turn off the heat and let those cool down a little bit while we go ahead and unwrap a couple packages of cream cheese and add them to this mixing bowl. And since those packages are 8 ounces each, we have 1 pound total. I know, thank you, Mr. Math. And then to that, we can go ahead and add our bacon veggie mixture, along with the rest of our clam chowder dip ingredients, which will obviously need to include some clams. And I'm going to use a couple 6.5-ounce cans that have been drained. And these are what they call in the business chopped clams, but they also sell minced clams, which would work just as well, and maybe even better. And no, I'm not sure why we need minced and chopped clams at the market. But anyway, continuing on, we'll also go ahead and toss in some freshly chopped Italian parsley, as well as a cup or so of freshly grated extra sharp cheddar cheese. And I'm suggesting the white kind, not the orange kind, since that would look a little weird. And then we'll go ahead and season this up with a little bit of Worcestershire sauce. Nailed it. And then we will finish up with some freshly ground black pepper, as well as about 1/2 teaspoon of Old Bay. And if you're not sure what that is, I'll tell you on the blog post. And then once all that's in there, we'll go ahead and take a spoon and mix this up, which is super easy because my cream cheese was nice and soft and room temp. And of course, I'm just kidding. I forgot to take it out of the fridge again. Oh, and speaking of the cheese, since people got mad in the last video I didn't mention where the cream cheese came from, I will confirm that yes, this did come from a certain city in Pennsylvania. No, not Pittsburgh. Philadelphia. But anyway, we'll go ahead and mix this up until we're confident it is nicely combined. At which point we can transfer this into the casserole or baking dish of our choice. Anything shallow will work, and the exact size and shape really don't matter as long as it's oven proof. That is kind of important. So we'll go ahead and transfer that in and smooth out the top. And then you remember those couple tablespoons of crispy bacon we set aside? Whatever we haven't eaten of that, we'll go ahead and sprinkle over the top. Oh yeah, you know a recipe's pretty easy, when the hardest thing about it is not eating the garnish. Which I have to admit is pretty hard. But I was relatively disciplined, and most of it did survive. So we'll go ahead and scatter that over the top. And then on top of that, I like to do a little extra grated cheddar. All right, not too much. Just a little bit here and a little bit there. And then because this dip is supposed to honor the New England Patriots, we are going to do a little cheating before this goes in the oven. What we'll do before we pop this in is sprinkle some paprika or cayenne over the top, which will help give the surface even a more beautiful, richer color once this is browned. So this is technically optional, and up to you. I mean, you are, after all, the Tom Brady of being shady. And even though I like to do it, I won't be deflated if you don't. Either way, once that's set, this is ready to transfer into the center of a 400-degree oven for about 20 minutes or so, Plus maybe a couple minutes under the broiler, or until everything's heated through and the top is nicely browned. And if everything goes according to plan, it should look something like this, which as far as I'm concerned looks like something most people would want to eat. And then as far as service goes, I'm going to go ahead and place this next to some chips, and maybe finish it off with a little bit of freshly chopped Italian parsley. And by the way, the chip choice here is very critical, since I wouldn't consider this a clam chowder dip unless there was some kind of potato involved, which is why I'm serving mine with these puffed potato chips. And by puffed, I mean popped. And while this would be delicious on sliced bread, which is how every other clam chowder dip I saw served it, I'm thinking that some kind of potato chip is going to work out much better. And not only for the reason I just gave you, that potatoes are an important part of clam chowder, but also I think texturally, the crispiness of these works out better than the soft bread. Of course, having said that, it's pretty hard to eat a dip wrong, so use what you want. And by the way, as you may have noticed, I used a spoon for the first one, but then I wanted to make sure this qualified technically as a dip, which means you have to be able to dip something into it, which I did very successfully here, over and over and over. And above and beyond the amazing clam chowder-like taste, I thought the thickness of this dip was pretty much spot on. I mean, wicked perfect. But I was thinking if you wanted something just a little bit thinner, just a little looser, maybe adding a couple tablespoons of that clam juice from the can would not be a bad idea. So just a little something to consider. But anyway, that's it. What we're calling New England clam chowder dip. Sure, I love football and watching TV and hanging with friends. But let's be honest, the best thing about a Super Bowl party, besides watching commercials on purpose, is being able to eat ridiculous and insanely delicious dips like this. So I really do hope you give this a try soon. Head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.